Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time we're talking about episode 20 of Green Lantern, the animated series called Cold Fury. Now, I'm guessing that like a lot of you going into this episode, we thought the title was going to be referring to Razor. And boy, did that turn out to not be true at all. You know, one thing I like about this episode is the way that Aya is brought back. It first of all, it comes as a genuine surprise. I thought for a second when that Hand was climbing up over the ramp that it was one of the Spider Guild guys. So when it turned out to be Aya, it was a genuine surprise. But when she explained how it is that she survived by downloading herself into a nearby Manhunter robot, it made perfect sense. And that's the hallmark of good writing, is when they can throw something at you that is a genuine surprise, but the logic behind it makes perfect sense. It's like, okay, well, why didn't I think of that, or why didn't I notice that? So some real points to the writing staff there. Of course, the only question there is, if she downloaded that into a Manhunter robot that was just hanging around, why does it have a face that looks like Aya's normally does, instead of just looking like a Manhunter? Now, personally, I think it would have been really cool if they'd done that. There'd been a Manhunter climbing up there, and then everybody's getting ready to blast it, and all of a sudden it speaks with Aya's voice. That would have been really awesome. Not to mention, made the whole situation with Razor even more weird and awkward. But, excuse me. What we get, even though it doesn't make sense, is still pretty good. Now, let's just continue talking about the whole Aya Razor thing, since that's really at the crux of what's going on this episode. And the really interesting thing here is that Razor tries to push Aya away, and of course this ends up ending in a spectacularly bad decision. But Razor's choice is obviously probably not the wisest one. It is an extremely understandable one. And of course he's lying. We saw the Manhunters using their ability to detect emotions on Razor, and that there confirms that Razor's lying when he says that he never loved Aya. And that is the love, that is genuine love that we see in that scene there back on the Blue Lanterns planet. The thing here that's going on with Razor is it really actually isn't about Aya. It's about him. Here it is. Last time he had confessed his love to her. He had apparently put his wife's death behind him. He was ready to move on. And then, of course, Aya was just yanked away from him at the worst possible moment in the cruelest way. And Razor, he just can't seem to bear the idea of that happening to him a third time. And, well, that's a pretty understandable feeling. Nobody wants to go through the death of someone they love even once. But that's an inevitability of life. But it being an inevitability doesn't make it any easier any time that it happens. It's still really about the worst thing that can happen to us as human beings, is to lose one of the people who occupies the most precious places in one of the most precious places in our heart. So in doing this, Razor really isn't trying to protect Aya, he's trying to protect himself. And of course, Aya, as a being who is new to emotions, particularly the emotion of love, she just doesn't know how to deal with this. I mean, she literally kind of has her own little blue screen of death moment there. And of course she tries to get a little bit of advice out of Hal, but now is really not the time for Hal to be playing Dr. Drew. So, yeah. And another thing that Aya doesn't really understand in regards to emotions is something that she misinterprets from Razor. Razor says to her that he just sort of turns his emotions off. And of course, in a crisis situation, that is pretty much the right thing to do. Police officers, soldiers, and other people who have to deal with these kind of things, these really hard, very stressful, traumatic things. That's what they're trained to do in situations like that. But the thing is, and this is the key difference, and this is what really sends everything straight to hell, that by his nature as an organic being, Razor is an emotional being. It is in his nature to feel emotions. Aya is a machine. she was not designed to feel emotions. She was, in fact, it was the opposite. Her coming to emotions was, some kind of cosmic fluke, miracle, chance, whatever you want to call it. But it has left her very much in uncharted territory. She just does not know how to handle these things. And of course she's looking to like Hal and Razor to help her through it all, but still she's very much groping in the dark here. And Aya's nature as a machine makes it so that when she turns some aspect of herself off, like imagine disabling an add-on in your browser, well, it's off. I mean, that's it. There is no, it is not in its nature to automatically turn itself back on. Aya has to consciously make the choice to do that. Unlike Razor, now he can maybe bury his emotions deeply as he wants, and he's already tried that, but that doesn't mean that they're there. That doesn't mean that they go away. With Aya, it's a little bit of a different story. By making that choice, she has very seriously crossed a threshold, and in all likelihood she didn't even fully understand the implications of what it was she was doing. Actually, given the way things go, it's pretty safe to say that she didn't understand that at all. And now there's the question of, can she go back? And heck, there was that situation even before she ended up merging with the Anti-Monitor. For a second there, I actually thought she was turning into a Blue Lantern just by the way that she had that energy glowing around her. But of course, that's pretty ridiculous. Heck, if you want to associate a power ring color with the Anti-Monitor, well, if I might, I thought I had it in arm's reach, but I don't. I actually bought some Green Lantern comics yesterday, but if you want to associate a ring color with the Anti-Monitor, it would most definitely be the rings of the Black Lanterns. But that's a little bit outside the purview of what's going on here. But one thing that I want to comment on that I noticed is that when Aya is talking to Hal and Kilowog and Razor and all those other folks after she's taken over the Anti-Monitor's body, she makes it the specific point of saying, what a problem emotions are and how they're basically, the source of trouble in the universe. And this is basically the credo of the Manhunters. So I can't help but wonder if maybe her time spent in that Manhunter body might not have, quote-unquote, infected her a little bit there. So, on the other hand, it would be just really easy to sort of blame all of this on the Manhunters rather than saying that this is some flaw within Aya herself or just the consequences of Razor making a stupid emotional decision. I'm just throwing that out there as something for us all to think about. So yeah, here's the situation. Aya is, turned her emotions off and has basically set herself up as the queen of the Manhunters. And wow, there's no way this situation could possibly get worse, is there? Somehow, I don't think that's true. But again, we're just going to have to wait and see all that. And I do have to kind of register one small complaint here. I kind of really feel sorry for Kilowog. He had that romance thing going on with that one alien lady, and after that was all over with, he's really been kind of taking a back seat. And that really is a shame. It's not that he doesn't have an important role in the show, but he's really been on the sidelines quite a bit. But anyway, let's go on. Speaking of some of the other characters on the show, again, we have some weirdness going on with the Guardians. I honestly can't remember the female Guardian's name and don't feel like looking it up. And it's actually, after this episode, somewhat irrelevant. But her bringing up that the Guardians had powers and abilities that they had long put away and suppressed or things like that. Again, this is completely in keeping with Green Lantern history. In fact, for the longest part of Green Lantern history, there were, beyond the Zamorans, the Star Sapphires, there were no female Guardians. That took until the sometime in the, I guess it was the late 90s that changed due to some stuff that Kyle Rayner did as Green Lantern. When he basically returned the Guardian race from the dead, he made it a point to make female Guardians, which I always thought was actually pretty cool, because having them all be male just made the Guardians seem really weird, and even basically made the Guardians seem very, very creepy. Which I guess is not entirely bad given their role, but at the end of the day, the Guardians are supposed to be good guys, so. But one of the things that the Guardians have always been prone to is arrogance, hubris. This, I don't need to explain myself to you. I'm the Guardian, you're the Green Lantern. Do what I say. And here in this episode, we see that attitude very much on display. Not to mention the idea that they can control everything. And again, this is a flaw that has really risen up more than once in the Guardians. And if you're familiar with the DC universe, then you probably understand the relationship between the Guardians and the Controllers. And given one thing that we know for sure is going to be happening later on this season, at least if you've been paying attention to the commercials for the show and have a decent understanding of the DC universe, well, you'll understand then how the Controllers possibly may play into some of that. Honestly, I have a feeling they might just sort of skip the Controllers, but well, anyway, when that episode rolls along, we'll have a nice long chat about that. Now, looking at some of the other things that happened in this episode. First of all, I gotta say, the Green Lanterns and the Red Lanterns teaming up to fight the Anti-Monitor, really cool stuff. There's a lot of really epic stuff going on just visually with Shard and the battles and the spaceships, the Red Lanterns abandoning Shard. I mean, really, the visuals in this episode are really top-notch stuff. I mean, this is the sort of thing that would be in a blockbuster. If this was live action, this would be like the big summer $300 million blockbuster. And here we are getting it in a manner of storytelling that's just as good, right there on the small screen. How cool is that, huh? But it's also a very dark episode. I mean, look at how much destruction there is. There's death of major characters. People really doing very serious emotional damage to people that they love. I mean, this ain't a happy episode. I mean, there's a little bit of humor here and there, but all in all, this is a fairly grim episode. And let me see. Yeah, I did want to say that in regards to one of my complaints from the last episode, Zox seems to pull his head out of his butt a little bit here. Rather than being just a genuine coward, he's just sort of a jerk, which of course is totally in keeping with Zox. Now the idea that Hal has to order him to well, not exactly order him, but basically really give him a kick in the butt just to get him to evacuate Shard, that seems to me to be pretty in keeping with Zox. He's a crazy fella, and he likes himself some violence, and he does not suffer anything like setbacks very well. So the idea that he would just basically try and bull his way through an impossible situation, even if it cost him the lives of countless Red Lanterns, that's perfectly in keeping with the kind of guy Zelias Zox is. But with that said, yeah, really, honestly, apart from what's going on with Aya and her developments and her relation to Razor, this was kind of a thin episode. Yeah, really. I feel a little ridiculous having even said that. This is a story that this is an episode that basically had to have one really important thing happen, and it did, and it happened really well in a very well told way. But apart from that one big thing that happens this episode, there's really not a huge amount of stuff going on. There's a few things out on the sidelines that are of reasonable importance, but still, this is this is a very centered episode. Let's put it that way. Again, probably not the best way of phrasing things, but I'm sure you understand what it is that I'm driving at. So, with that said, folks, I think I've covered everything I have to say about this episode. I gotta say, this is really, really making the remaining episodes that we have this season look like they're going to be some very slam bang exciting stuff. And I can't wait for more. So, with that said, folks, we're going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.